Hey, Niels, it's Darren. Pleasure to meet you. So you were somebody we wanted to get on the podcast. We are the Data Standard. This year has been an interesting year. We're starting our podcast with a little bit of empathy and reflection on 2020, the hacks that you did to survive or try to survive last year. So I always think that's a good place to start. And Niels, can you share some stories about what you did to stay mentally fit? What did you do to survive last year?
Oh man, and it's been challenging. There's been family things, there's been work things, there's been all sorts of adversities.
I know, that's why we start here. It's just Survivor. I agree.
I would say I did very well to have such a great team at work. So I can do a shout out to them. And I always called them, maybe I shouldn't call them my generals, but I do call them my generals, and they've been very, very good to lean on. But also I've been sort of making sure that I take care of myself. So I've been like running in the mornings, and I'm making sure that I eat properly, and vitamin D is very important if you hear all that stuff about vitamin D. And so generally the basic stuff, and making sure that you have a schedule too. Like, even though we're working from home and you might be able to do, come in at strange hours of the day, you learn that your sleep and stuff, like keeping your circadian, is important. So not terribly interesting, I'm afraid, but that's sort of what I would say that I've been doing.
No, I think you said a few things that I've heard before, and one thing that I've done, I love the routine. I love a schedule. I think that has been incredible during COVID, is to keep to a schedule. And I started journaling. I really got back into journaling. Not only do I keep a routine, but I spend now a lot of quality time just doing reflection and journaling. And that has also, it's been nice to look back at the notes. And like you said, with the team, it's really checking in with everybody like you did. It's just everybody's going in their homes, and whether it be sickness, job insecurity, or job security, there's just a lot on people's mind that they bring to work. And keeping the team, calm, I think, is important. That's how I think about it. What city are you in? And did you move? Or are you still in the same city? So where are you working from?
So I was in the Capitol Hill area of Seattle for quite a period of time, and then renting a place there. And then I've recently moved south of the city to Renton. So if you know the Seattle area.
All right. So you did not leave the state. You are still in the state.
No, I'm still in the state. Yeah.
I did the exodus. I did the San Francisco to Miami exodus. We had one of our past guests on the podcast went the Chicago to Hawaii exodus. How great is that?
I know my friend has just finished his setup in Hawaii. I'm a little bit jealous of him. I think we have a Zoom call the weekend, and he's going to show me his new setup.
Sick. Now, why did you decide to stay? If you could work anywhere, right? I don't know if you can, but why would you stay? Just curiosity, in Seattle.
The KPMG group, we're still reasonably core here. Nobody in the group seems to leave that much. No, I'm Canadian, and also my personal family is in Vancouver, Canada. And so It's nice to be reasonably close there. Although crossing the border is a bit of a trick right now. Definitely you have to do the quarantine and stuff. So, yeah.
You're not coming back. Yeah, you go up north to Canada, you ain't coming back.
Yeah, there's a way to do it, but it's somewhat of, you're quarantining both directions, and it's a big hassle. So, yeah.
That is unbelievable. Now, for me, what I've seen and talking to people is so many people on this podcast who are data thought leaders and data scientists, senior executives. I would say 90% of them, maybe 95% of them stayed in their local area. I just was surprised by that number, because I keep reading about how many people are doing the exodus. But also our bias is we didn't have that many people from San Francisco on the podcast. So people in New York are staying in New York. At least, people in Chicago. Again, I've only had one or two people that moved. It's crazy. And so now with this community, we came together because of COVID. We came together just to bring empathy to introverts, because so many of the data scientists that we speak with are pretty happy. Working from home, alone, life is pretty good for them. And I'm trying to have still people be able to meet people. And how challenging has it been for you to meet people and during this time of COVID when you're not on the plane? And I don't know if you're also on KPMG flying, 100,000 miles, but let's talk about what's it like for you to meet people, and were you living on the road before COVID?
That depends. And I hate to say, I mean, it's a consulting answer. It depends. But there have been clients where I have been on the road a reasonable amount, and I haven't been on the road as much as some others. I know there are some that basically live in hotels all the time. But it seems that those are more on like who are really client facing, who are doing like the hard sell front end stuff. But also, yeah, it really depends on the client. I know of a certain financial client that really does want you there Monday through Thursday, and then they give you Friday to like recover. Otherwise, you would go crazy. But you're always flying in to do that thing. Right now, we're not traveling. Everybody's sort of working from home, and we're sort of figuring out what the clients want.
Right.
Yeah. But in terms of meeting people and figuring out, I've got a sort of a small group here that I hang out with. So that's my pod. But it has been, it is odd. I mean, I'm reasonably social person myself. So I wouldn't say I'm a classical introvert because I do get, really kind of lonely and you need to interact. It's more of a weird, I'd say this is like a quiet crisis. That's what I call it. I was like, I look outside and I'm like, man, nature doesn't really care.
Right.
It's going on. It's our own crisis.
You called it quiet, right? Quiet crisis. I like
a quiet crisis.
Yeah, it is an interesting time. I don't miss the travel. I do miss the hotels and hotel living, but I don't miss the jet lag and the layover. I don't miss that. I was talking to a friend of mine last night, and I'll tell you what else I miss. And maybe you can appreciate this, Niels. It's so stupid, but I miss blocking out 3 hours because I know I'm going to be on an airplane to catch up on email and pitch decks and creative writing. So that like that block of time, you're like, okay, I'm going to do my expenses and I'm going to catch up on my, status reports because I'm flying to New York and I am going to have 4 hours to do nothing. That's what I miss.
I sort of miss a little bit the pressure. So sometimes I miss sometimes these engagements are really like, let's see if this can actually work, right? And so sometimes when you truly have the screws turned on you, you can actually do something pretty amazing. And some of my clients are like, it's legitimately fun. Like that one particular client, it's like you have like a kinesiologist, and we had this was like a workout application that we were developing and doing the data science for about trying to recommend workouts for you. And I had this one crazy meeting with 16 great professionals. And I was like, did that meeting actually happen? Because that was probably the coolest thing that happened in my life.
That's awesome.
And it's one of those, you flew in, you did that, and then all these amazing people showed up, and then you went on and did your day. And I was like, what just happened? That was a blip.
That's incredible. There is going to be one of our data science community members. I'll connect you after this. First of all, he has a huge following. I think he's like 40,000 followers. He does the data analytics for the golf Ryder Cup team. So all he studies is golf stats.
Oh, wow.
That's the guy actually who moved to Hawaii. I mean, he's living the dream. Can you imagine being in Chicago, being a consultant, doing golf stats? Then you could move anywhere, and he moves to Hawaii to still do golf stats. So he's statting and just playing golf in Hawaii. Yeah, it doesn't suck.
That's a big thing, going from the Chicago winter to Hawaii.
I know. I was saying, what took you so long? He was like, as soon as I can go, I can go. Now as we kind of go into, I like to get to meet people and really learn about people. And I think our audience like these conversations as well. Mm-hmm. We will get into some data conversations, and there's so many things we could talk on this call about data. Why don't you pick the thread, right? It could be what you're working on. It could be trustworthiness. It could be ethics. What do you want, to talk about?
Well, I mean, the funny thing that I've been learning about lately is how there's a bit of a gold mine out there. Well, at least I think there's a gold mine out there in terms of figuring out these damn ERP systems. And they've been around since the 80s and the 90s, and they came out of manufacturing. Microsoft thinks they have a common data model that people can integrate with, but this is a pretty big problem for a lot of industries out there that are not big tech. Big tech is going full throttle ahead on data science, and they're really benefiting. And there's a lot of industries where it's they're playing catch up, and those are a lot of our clients, right? But there's a little bit of a disconnect between we have our data scientists, and we really focus on the tech, and we really focus on the algorithms, and we really focus on that, but we don't necessarily focus on the systems where the data is coming from, or at least in tech, they own the systems where the data is coming from. So they own the whole pipeline. But if they purchase that system from like an Oracle or an SAP or Microsoft, it doesn't seem like our two groups talk very much about those systems. I don't know if you agree or not, but that's sort of what I've been
it's a very I think it's a very interesting topic, and it's something that you're right, based on some things that you see, it's so relevant. Most of our guests are at those enterprises that probably bought the systems. But you're right, the data it needs to be in a place where people can access it and model it. Mm-hmm. And I think the second part to your question is, how far back do you really need to go? I mean, can we even do a fresh start or a reboot? Like, these are questions that I think about. Mm-hmm. And the data scientist wants to keep all data, right? That's, hey, we might need it one day. And I just wonder, when is it okay to start fresh on a new system, right, and then move out of those ERPs? And that's how I think about it.
Like, the trouble is that those ERPs keep the lights on for the operations of their company, right? So that's where it's like, well, you can't touch that thing because that just and the ERP people are they're very focused on keeping that working.
Right.
And then you as the analyst come along and you're like, hey, can I do that? No.
No.
Like, don't even talk to me about it. Like, don't even think about it. So just sort of like doing like that, that's going from the OLAP and the OLAP, it's like online transaction database into online analytics database, at least the way that we used to talk about it, and getting it. And the thing is, like, I spend all my time, so I think almost every engagement I've ever been on, when I do the walk of the whole data pipeline to just like do my own sanity check, 100% of the time I find some sort of craziness, right? And
right.
like the data science isn't the problem. Like, that's not the craziness. Like, I solve that problem, and then I do linear regression, and I'm 80% of the value is got. And the PhD students can fight over the other 20%. But that's, to me, is kind of the sad part, is that, like, I spend a lot of my time, well, it's sort of the data engineering. the right. Data engineering is becoming the critical thing at a lot of these enterprises. And also,
I think you bring up a really good point. I had another guest who is a data scientist at IBM, and he's now moving to be a data engineer. So I think there is something going on right now with data engineering and data scientists, and scientists are becoming engineers. I don't know if engineers want to be a scientist. What are you seeing? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's not the most sexy transition. I find a lot of people I would love it too. I would love it if everything would work like that. We could all exist. We could exist in our ivory towers, and we could just talk about, the beauty of getting the algorithm. But in reality, a lot of these systems evolved organically. And we got to go march the line and figure out what the heck happened. And is the data truly representing, the event? If you want to think about it statistically, like, this data is supposed to represent events in an experiment, right? And doing that legwork, and there's sort of the transition to, there's also sort of like three sort of stages to it. I'm sort of backtracking a little bit, but it's like, there's the data scientists who like think about the beautiful model. There's, okay, you thought about the beautiful model. There's the ML engineers that like, let's turn that into some really nice computer science. And then there's the operations people who are like, this thing has to run every day, bro. Like,
right.
it can't mess up. So the hardening of it. And so I'm now sort of in the camp of like, there's sort of three pillars, and they kind of have to talk to each other, and they have to hand off to each other, but it's expensive. That's the other part, is a lot of people don't want to make this kind of investment because of the expense and the capital costs of having all these teams around, or at least that's how it's feeling in sort of like some of the clients that we've been working with.
And are you on where you sit in those three piles? Or you think you're sitting in a more of the data engineering role? You're a data scientist who's doing data engineering? Or where do you see yourself?
I have an undergrad in computer science and statistics. And then in grad school, I did a PhD in bioinformatics, but really did a lot of work in distributed computing. So I really did the role of, hey, this algorithm no longer works because we got this new genomics data set that just completely blows out the original way we implemented it. And so we'd have to sit down and reevaluate sort of how this thing was being processed. And so I've been continuing continuously always thinking about, okay, how is this going to work on something big? Right.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's also when you have that type of skill set and that superpower, I think, working at a place like you're at, do you enjoy working on different problems at different customers? So I think that's the big joy, is you can jump from sector to sector, problem to problem, versus just working on the same company and the same problem. Like, what are your thoughts on
that? You have to love that. You can't come and work for us if you don't love that. Otherwise, it's like, and there's pros and cons to that, right? It's like every day is kind of no engagement that I started with turned out the way that you expected it.
That's so funny. Yep, totally agree.
You realize that, like, you get there and then you realize that the story's a little bit different, maybe quite a bit different once you get there. And then you're sort of like the expert and you're like, now what do I do that's best to help these folks? Because you're kind of the expert in the room. And it makes you feel pretty good when you do that. But if you want to really sink your teeth into a problem, like get really deep into the tech and do it from a research role, you're going to find yourself a little bit frustrated because they're going to take the problem away from you on a 3 or 6 month basis, right? There is innovation projects internally, but it doesn't really last that much longer than a year or maybe 2 years. That could change, but that's sort of consulting.
One of our team members at the Data Standard, she just graduated college and she got her first job and she's going to work at Deloitte. So I'll connect you with her, but she was so excited to work on, different sector problems and work at a big company, go through the training. And I said to her, I think you're going to do great things. And she's so excited to work at a big company. And I think what's going to be great is that big company experience. But there are some people that get lost in a big company experience. I don't think she will. I think she's going to crush it. But have you seen people churn out also just because of the size of the company? And it's just too big of a machine?
I've seen that happen in tax and audit. So those are like the more classic areas of the firm. And there are some areas of consulting where things like deal advisory, where things are a bit more stable. But we were a strategic growth initiative for the firm. And so initially our group was only like 120 people. And I think we're growing to don't quote me on the number right now. I know we're like more than 600 or something, but it feels pretty small because you're always like at a different small group client. So, so for being like a big KPMG, I know everybody in my group, but what it gets really big is when I have to think about all of advisory. That's when you kind of do get lost.
That's when you feel it. Yeah, I got it. We're a data community and we have people that I'm going to connect you with. Like you said, there's someone who's doing golf stats, another team member is now at Deloitte. We also have community members that have some cool tech. Do you ever bring tech into one of your clients if it helps get to the problem faster, or do you already have all the tech you need? Like, how does that work? So if I connect you with somebody, is that even a possibility? Or is that's a tough one?
No, it can. I mean, we can partner with, and then we can write it into, anything's possible in a contract. So
yeah, no, I think that's pretty neat, because what we have is we have senior executive C-suite team members, and also we have some C-suite that left and started companies. But this whole part of how we connected is I wanted to get you on the podcast so we can meet. And now what I do is I will, if it's okay with you, start connecting you with our community, because we don't have the luxury of travel. Right. So, and then you'll just start meeting other mindful, thoughtful data enthusiasts. And then one day when COVID is past us, maybe it's 2022, we're going to have a party.
Sure.
So I think we'll eventually meet, but I don't think it's till 2022, and maybe we'll all be in a city. So right now it's just about like hanging out with people just to give you a sense of community, friendship, and like-minded peers that you probably might not have met. What else are we doing? Everyone's in lockdown. So if I can introduce you to a few people. So what are your thoughts?
No, that sounds really good. That sounds great. I could tell you sort of just at a high level how we would go to market with somebody, like some partner. So say if there is a startup that we want to work with, like basically we would choose some client and KPMG would talk to the client and be like, hey, we are going to have like another subcontractor and we're going to go together. And basically we deliver together, right? And then the profits, I think, are shared in that arrangement. Yeah.
If you prove it with one client, I'm sure then it gets through the network of KPMG, like, hey, we had a success. Put it into the next one. But for me, this was more of like, I was just excited to meet you and I just want to think about who to connect you with, right? So I'm going to connect you with a mix. We have some CTOs are like, don't connect me with anybody. I have vendors. I already have enough vendors. I'm like, no, these are just humans. They're not vendors. They're just community members. The other thing I'm on is I host an IBM expert TV show. So IBM launched a TV network. And they were on my podcast and they asked me to be a show host. So I have my own show on the IBM network. So I don't know if there's a there, but if you would like me also to introduce you to people on IBM, I would more than be happy to also. I don't know if that also helps you as well. But if KPMG does anything like employee engagement TV, I'll send you those clips because maybe there's some more stuff we can do together, right? This is all about surviving and creating things during isolation. And then once the world opens, I don't know what happens.
For a big four firm, we're surprisingly open, So, or at least the person you're talking to and the group you're talking to at KPMG is kind of the most open part of it. So that's all awesome. Very welcome.
So, and you're okay if I just start connecting you on LinkedIn to some of our community members?
Oh, sure.
Okay, cool. There'll be a mix of big company, small company, but I don't know, but there might be things you need. But our members are now, we've got like 12,000 members. So as you're also going out there's a good shot. One of their senior executives are on our community. So if you're in the midst of an RFP, again, my point is whatever you need in our community, we're here. And that's what we're trying to build. That's it. That's what we do. Help each other.
Awesome.
All right. Now, this was great. We're sponsored by Pandio. They're the leader in distributed messaging, and we thank them from their support. Els, thanks for being on the show, my man. And I'll send some connections out. And when we do have our party, you'll be there.
Absolutely. Sounds great. Always like a party.
I love it. All right. Have a great night, my man. Thank you.
Take care, Darren. Bye for now.